I'm a coach that blends the neuroscience as well as the strategy. And I absolutely work on the unconscious self. And the reason why I work on the unconscious self is, as you have said, around the elephant and the rider, the unconscious self is absolutely the seat of all of our decisions. And we may think that we make our decisions 100% of the time consciously. Actually, only 5% of our decisions are made consciously, and 95% of our decisions are made subconsciously.
Welcome to Get Invested on the Property Hub podcast channel, the leading weekly show to help you unlock your full self, health and wealth potential. I'm your host, Bushy Martin, and each week I go deep with the best investors, experts, leaders and founders to find out what it takes to break free from the grind, discover freedom and live by design. Subscribe now and join me and get invested in the life you really want. Let's get started. Hi, freedom fighters. Today, I want to return to an important topic that's been plaguing my thoughts for actually quite some time now, because I keep seeing a lot of hardworking investors fall short of their ideal lifestyle goals, and it revolves around questions that you may be quietly asking yourself. Things like, why do I feel stuck? I know what I need to do, and I know what I want to do, but when push comes to shove, I just keep falling back into the same old bad habits and nothing seems to change. Well, this answer to all of this is the crux of what separates the 5% who achieve sustainable success from the rest. Now, as many of you may know, I'm a big believer that sustainable success in anything lies at the intersection of your three L's: yourself, your health, and your wealth. And the foundation stone for your success, however you choose to define it, revolves around your mindset, your core beliefs, outlooks, attitudes, and expectations that silently guide your behaviours like an invisible hand. And our mindset's driven and deeply embedded in our emotional subconscious, beyond the reach and realms of our rational conscious mind. In this way, our conscious mind and our subconscious mind are a bit like a rider on an elephant. The conscious rider bobbing around on the top thinks he or she's in control of what's happening and where they're going, but the subconscious emotional elephant mind is actually the one that reacts to situations and goes on its own direction regardless of what the rider thinks or tries to do. So how can we reprogram the subconscious to achieve lasting transformational change that will allow us to go the distance to achieve our goals without self-sabotaging ourselves because of our limiting subconscious beliefs that we're probably not even aware of? For me, when I hit rock bottom in my early 30s and suffered my early life crisis when I ended up burnt out, broken and broke, and was forced to start again from absolutely nothing, I did a lot of mirror time, soul searching and working with a psychologist to reprogram my subconscious through a continuous mix of hypnosis, creating a clear positive vision board, reciting daily affirmations out loud in front of the mirror and recording it on my phone and replaying it every day when I was in the shower. You see, the cold hard reality is that if we're serious about making lasting transformational change that will allow us to attain and maintain our ideal lifestyle goals and turn our dreams into reality, we all need to do the work and keep doing the work on ourselves so that our subconscious doesn't revert to our safe and familiar childhood patterns like car wheels stuck in the well-worn ruts of an old macadamised road. Now, this has worked well for me personally, but it can also work on a very large community scale. As many of you may know, I lived and worked in the red centre of our great country in Alice Springs many years ago, back in the late 1980s and early 90s when I was an architect. And at the time, a town like Alice was doing it tough, with business struggling and many locals harbouring very negative thoughts, which became self-fulfilling because what we think about and talk about is what we bring about. So myself and a great creative friend of mine, Colin Cowell, who was a journalist, created the Alice 2000 Community Vision Program that collaboratively created a positive vision using Jeffrey Robertson-style future hypotheticals that leapt over the narrow short-term negative focus on problems and the blame game to lift everyone's sights onto a long-term unified positive solutions that acted as a magnet and a compass to guide future community decisions. We hosted a series of monthly community events over a year that brought together all of the key stakeholders in the town, including all levels of government, that painted a series of limitless positive visions of how life in Alice could be, which is backed and communicated continuously by the local media, all based on the return to the roots of our Indigenous heritage and our adventurous pioneering spirit that originally created a town like Alice in the first place. Now, the collaborative and committed unified vision that evolved from this community vision program turned the perception and sentiment of the town around and created the impetus for a period of unrivaled prosperity for a decade or more. And as all of the various community groups embraced the vision as their own and took the action to turn the dreams into reality with pride, they did this all by lifting and changing collective beliefs and driving a new narrative. It's about instilling my lifetime motto that I've been talking about for over a decade now, of living by design, not by default, of living with intent to make it happen, not let it happen, starting with a very clear vision of the future. Now, this might all sound a bit woo-woo, but as you're about to hear from our very special guest, Dr. Simone Boer today, it's all based on and backed by neuroscience. And Dr. Simone is living proof and a walking, talking, shining example of transformational change in action through her impressive property investments that now enable her life-changing coaching work. As you're about to hear, Dr. Simone's career path has been anything but a straight line. Think of it more like a thrilling rollercoaster ride through the worlds of neuroscience, business strategy, and now life-changing coaching. Alongside her 9-to-5 adventures, Simone's been a savvy player in the property game for over 15 years. She's juggled an investment portfolio across Australia's varied landscapes. She's finessed 3 subdivisions and rolled up her sleeves for 4 renovations. And her latest move? Stepping into the commercial property arena. With an investment portfolio that's worth over $6 million and a relatively low level of debt, she's not playing the game, she's acting it. Yet, the true spirit of Dr. Simone comes alive in her coaching work. Imagine combining the braininess of a neuroscientist with the vision of a business strategist, all channeled into coaching that turns lives around. That's where her signature brain hacks come into play, giving you the tools to live your best life. Simone's property investments have given her the financial runway to focus on her passion, using brain science to help you unlock your fullest potential. And she doesn't just tinker with the mind, she transforms lives, helping you to find inner confidence and deep and meaningful satisfaction in your life and your wealth. So I'm really looking forward to unpacking all of this in our 2-episode feature with Dr. Simone Boer. So welcome, and let's get invested, Simone.
No worries. Thank you for that intro, Bushy. Amazing.
Well, you've inspired that. Been doing a lot of Google stalking of all of the work that you've been doing over the years, and it's a real rare privilege to actually spend some time with someone who clearly thinks very similarly to me, but you've taken it to another level. So I guess, Simone, just to sort of kick things off in terms of personal introduction, can I get you to sort of talk us through what you do differently and, more importantly, why you do what you do?
Yeah, perfect. So I couldn't have put it even better with that intro there, Bushy. I'm a coach. However, I'm not just any type of coach. I'm a coach that blends the neuroscience as well as the strategy. And I absolutely work on the unconscious self. And the reason why I work on the unconscious self is, as you have said, around the elephant and the rider, the unconscious self is absolutely the seat of all of our decisions. And we may think that we make our decisions 100% of the time consciously. Actually, only 5% of our decisions are made consciously, and 95% of our decisions are made subconsciously. And as I'm talking to you right now, Bushy, you're currently taking in and processing 40 to 50 pieces of information right now consciously, and subconsciously, you are processing 11 million pieces of information. So, rounding that all up, what I do differently is when people say, oh, you're a coach, I actually call myself a neuro coach. And the reason why I call myself a neuro coach is that I bring in the neuroscience knowledge with the coaching to really go to the subconscious which is the seat of transformation, not the conscious. And most coaches will go to the conscious self. I'll go to the seat of the transformation and really upgrade that architecture that you've built as a child and gently dissolve parts of it and move parts around so that you can upgrade it as an adult. And why I do that, for me, it is all about living your best life. And your best life is determined by you and you alone. And for me, why I do this is what gives me the zing and passion every single day, is to see the unlocking of others to also live their best life.
I love that. I can't imagine how satisfying and fulfilling it must be to see someone who's probably been struggling for years without knowing why, to suddenly be able to change their outlook and their mindset and start to really take big strides in what they're doing. I don't think there'd be much more satisfying than that.
Yeah, and the satisfaction comes in little moments. And those little moments are either text messages, voice messages, wins of the week that my clients have had, or a year or two down when I randomly meet them at a function, they'll come up to me, give me the biggest hug and say, "You won't believe where I am now as a result of the work that I did 2 years ago." And those little moments that come quite as surprises throughout the course of my life and my journey, that's when I go, yes, that I've made a difference.
Absolutely love that. This is going to be really inspiring from that perspective. But I guess to put it in context then, Dr. Simone, I'd love you for you to take us on a bit of a Reader's Digest of your journey so far in terms of personal, professional and property to some degree, to talk about what you've invested your time, energy and money in over the years and why, and how has this led you to what you're now doing?
Yeah, perfect. So I'll take it back to when I was a child, because it's fantastic. You can read all of these credentials of what I've achieved and all these achievements now, but I didn't start off like that. And I started off in a home that was broken. I was in a single parent household with a mother who worked so hard to put food on the table. And that instilled in me very much a drive to not end up like that. She was barely able to get the bills to be paid. And so that really hard-working ethic really helped instill a lot of values. And so when I went to university, I was the one that was working 3 jobs, because I'd seen her work around the clock to try to put food on the table for myself and my sister. And so for myself, I worked 3 jobs to put myself through uni, sometimes 4 jobs, I think, even at one stage. It was just, I was always working, studying as a way to pull myself out of the environment that I naturally came out of. Why I chose neuroscience? Well, that's another good question. Really, I've got a way of looking at myself and being able to reflect on myself and the decisions that I make. And I sat there, I went, I feel like no one else really does this. So why do we make these decisions? Why do we choose those decisions? And is there really a choice or not? And I went, I'm going to study psychology. And that then led down to the neuroscience pathway as well. And I went, let's give it a go. Let's see what we can do. And so there I was in neuroscience, working in a wet laboratory in the largest brain bank in the Southern Hemisphere, looking at cases or people who had passed away that had had a psychiatric illness. Yep. And it was a very lonely job. And you pretty much pour your whole life into that. I sat there one day in a windowless room for 6 weeks by myself, cutting up brain tissue, going, is that all there is to life? Mm. This isn't quite why I've gone into neuroscience. And the neuroscience was absolutely to have an impact on people and the world. But I went, is that all there is to life? And with that, I packed up my bag and started to look at, well, what other careers could I have? What other transformations could I have? And from that career perspective, I went into data and analytics, into strategy, into the coaching of where I am now. The other component that I just wanted to talk about in terms of my background and who I am is the property.
Yeah.
Now, as you can see, or as you've heard from my background, we didn't have a lot of money. Now, my mother was a saver. She saved and saved and saved and saved as much as she could until she could afford for things. So the Christmas dinner, she put aside $5 every single week so we could have a lovely Christmas dinner. Her thing was, make Christmas a special time. So that instills a set of beliefs. And that set of beliefs really, for me, was around saving. I must save, I must save, I must save. Work hard, save, work hard, work, save. And it's really curious because that's pretty much where I would have been, probably even to now, except for a few things. The first thing, one of the boyfriends that I had in my early 20s, whose parents were just a traditional working family, had 4 properties. And I went, what's going on here? They were the very first people I'd ever come across in my whole life that had an investment portfolio. And that was enough to pique my interest, going, how are they doing that? And therefore the potential life choices that enabled their family as a result of having 4 properties. The one thing, and I do think that particular ex is, he said to me, you'll never be able to handle a mortgage because you're a saver. And I was that frugal. I was a tight ass, absolute tight ass. But by him saying that allowed me to start with my psychology and neuroscience background to look at myself going, hang on a sec, there's a set of beliefs here. How do I break that apart? So I went through a process of breaking that apart. And when it came right in the middle of the GFC and everyone was calling out doom and gloom, I was actually in a position at that time in order to buy my first property. And that first property was absolutely going to be my principal place of residence.
Okay.
So I looked in my local town, found a tiny little unit at the back of a set of 3, put in an offer, and as real estates do, they try to get the best price.
Yeah.
The thing was, this real estate agent probably haggled too high. And because they haggled too high, I spent a good week, could not sign the paper. Just could not sign the paper. And we're only talking $5,000. This is not huge biscuits at all. $5,000. I just could not sign the paper. And I was just looking around going, what else is there? And I found a property on 650 square meters, small house. And I went, $20,000 cheaper. And I went, which has more value? And which could be potentially subdivided and create a lot of value. So we went down the path of purchasing the larger block, small house, same size as that unit that I was going to purchase, $20,000 cheaper. And so started our property journey down the path of subdivisions and investing. And it was so easy, that first subdivision, that I went, why isn't it to create the value from basically getting a free block of land through the process of subdividing? I just went, why isn't anyone else doing this?
Yeah, love it. I want to jump in there because just circling back, given that, the sort of embedded outlook and mindset you would have had with the mother who was so, watch the pennies and it was all about saving. I'm assuming there were probably some initial fears and feelings of concern about taking the leap into borrowing money to get into the property exercise. How did you overcome those fears to actually have the courage to step beyond that and make that happen? What process did you go through?
I went and got myself another job. I had so many fears with that property purchase, and it was well within what I could pay from an interest perspective and my partner could pay. But I've had so many fears, and we're talking that initial unit that we were going to buy $5,000 over our budget. And I went, I need to make sure that we have a really comfortable lifestyle. I'll go and get. By that stage, I was down to one job. Yeah. And it was a neuroscientist role at that time. And I went, I'm going to get another job. And it's because that was exactly how my mother had raised me. So the fear absolutely crept in, and I went and got another job. And I was working in that job, that second job, for about 3 months. And I just went, what am I doing? And it was after the settlement had gone through, and we'd certainly had the money to pay for this, but I just went, what am I doing? I've just purchased a property that is well within our range. We have the ability to create value through a subdivision. What am I doing working through this second job? And I'd already worked out and done the sums that through the creation of this subdivision, the original property that we had purchased was actually going to be, even though it was only on half a block of land this time, was going to be worth the exact same value as what we had purchased. I went, I've just created some amazing equity here. Why am I working a second job? So it was through the process, and it was the actual act of doing that helped to dissolve some of those really ingrained belief systems. And the day that we moved into the property in the back, which was a brand new townhouse in the back, and rented out our front little house, we were like, we have just created something for ourselves, and it was incredibly tangible. And all the beliefs in that moment absolutely dissolved.
Yeah, love it. So clearly you're a learn by doing sort of person, and we all learn quite differently in that respect. But having to actually take the action, I can see would have had a big impact on, as you say, dissolving some of those cautious saving versus investing exercise. Yes. So that, as we both know, there's a big difference between saving and investing. It's a very different exercise in that regard. So no, love that. So take us on the rest of the journey then. So this first subdivision, clearly, as you say, it felt easy. And I'm guessing that then triggered similar exercise to rinse and repeat. Talk us through the journey from there, Simone.
Absolutely. It was, and when I say it was easy, we were going to, and at the time, we were talking 2008, 2009, there were not necessarily these boutique builders out there, as there are now, that specialise in subdivisions. So we were going to all the builders in the area going, do you build small houses? Do you build small houses? Do you build small houses? And we got to a particular builder that said, yes, we absolutely do. And we had our little picture of our block, and he goes, this is what we can put on it. You've got a choice of this one or this one. And we chose the bigger footprint. Yeah. And he goes, and we said, this is what we want to do. We want to subdivide. And he goes, I can project manage the subdivision for the same cost or the investment of the house. And we went, fantastic. Mm. So we went through that builder who was willing to manage the subdivision. So that's what I mean by it was easy. So we went, well, why isn't anyone else doing this? And we were looking around at all of our friends at the time who were going into the large loans and the large houses. And we were in a reasonable, we weren't in any McMansion, but we were in just a 2-bedroom townhouse. That's all we needed. And we're like, why isn't anyone else doing this? And one of the things that particular builder said to us at the time, which has stuck with us, is small house equals small loan throughout your whole life. And I went, bingo. Yeah. And so we kept that mindset to then do rinse and repeat. So property number 2, we found, we went two lot subdivision. We made a fair amount of capital from that. We've got a rental yield coming in, created some value. Property number 2, we said, let's do a 3-lot subdivision. 2-lot, that seemed relatively really easy. Let's do 3-lot. So we went on the hunt. We found a 3-lot subdivision and went, this is fantastic. And the builders that we engaged to do it in the time between settlement and then when it was time to do subdivision, building prices had increased about 150, 200K in that time.
Wow.
And we're like, what happened 3 months ago to now? Mm-hmm. And materials had increased and we're like, oh, this priced us out too much.
Would have created some financing challenges too, I would have thought.
Absolutely. We didn't, because it was our second project and we were still quite young and we didn't necessarily have the income to enable that, we were stuck. And so we went to our original builder who'd managed the subdivision and they were like, we don't design. If we did design, it would be a couple $100,000 more. And we were stuck again. And we're like, what do we do? So we decided we'd take on the subdivision ourselves because we went, well, we know the process enough. We've done it once, we'll do it again.
Yeah.
And we certainly did not know our stuff.
Enough to be dangerous, a bit like that?
Absolutely. So we had to do a sewer main extension. We had to put in stormwater pits. We had to do all sorts of additional cost into this 3-lot subdivision that you just do not need to do for a 2-lot.
Yeah.
And we ran out of money and we're like, well, what do? We've got 2 little blocks plus the existing house. What do we do? So we sold off one of the blocks of land in order to fund the second, the build of the, so we then had 2 little blocks, one with an existing house, one on behind.
Yep.
And we found by this stage a builder that had come down from Melbourne.
Yep.
So we were in Geelong.
Yep.
And he was just breaking into the Geelong market who could do small builds on small blocks. So we found him and went, we found our next builder. Fantastic. Built that up, recouped some of the money and went, brilliant. And so our strategy at the time was really around find a place with an existing house, small house, subdivide. Find a place, subdivide.
Yeah.
Find these little houses and renovate. And so that was our strategy. What that enabled us to do was to go out and look again. And by this stage, the real estate agents had caught up. They'd caught up with the market and they had started to price all of these existing houses that were subdividable, that those particular blocks had gone up significantly in price because they'd gone, there is a market and those markets are investors who are subdividing. Yeah. And so once again, we were priced out.
Yeah.
So we sat down and went, right, what can we do? We like this subdivision. We like to create value. So we thought, let's go with a block of land, not necessarily an estate, but could be subdividable.
Yeah.
Did the exact same thing again, subdivided it down the middle, built 2 townhouses.
Yep.
And by the time we had subdivided down the middle, built the 2 townhouses, when it came to the financing of it, our bank manager said, you don't actually have to put any deposit into this because the equity that has been created through the subdivision enables us to fund it all. And we're like, once again, why aren't people doing more of this?
Yeah, exactly. Using the sleeping equity to fund the ongoing redevelopment. Yeah, love it.
Yeah. So then we decided, well, just for fun, let's just buy a little unit and do a renovation.
Okay. Well, why change direction at that point? Was something in your mind that go, okay, well, we know this is working? Well, what attracted you into doing the reno exercise?
We wanted to get something close to my mum in case things happened and she needed to go into a smaller place. And that was the only reason why. And we thought, let's make this an investment as well.
Okay. This is all in the Geelong sphere?
All in the Geelong region.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, got it.
That one was probably a mistake, but we were able to get money out of it. And the reason it was a mistake was the idea being, let's get something close to my mum.
Yeah.
There was emotion in that.
Yeah.
And by having that emotion into that meant that we probably didn't choose the best property. And it was more based on specific location to where her current house was. And it was just a whole lot of headaches from the tenants that we attracted. And these are, university students with rats that chewed through the cornices and the carpet and all of that.
Yeah.
Through to the toilet that kept getting blocked because the tree roots had grown. And this is a typical 1970s tiny unit in a group of 5 that was it actually wasn't a really nice place to live in.
Yeah, it probably had strata and body corporate and all those headaches attached to it.
Absolutely. So we offloaded that off within about 4 years or 5 years of purchasing. We still made some equity and some capital on it, but not as much as if we invested somewhere else. But we learned from our mistake and went, right, numbers only.
Well, that's a really good learning, because I see so many investors, Dr. Simone, who go, we go and buy the investment property, but eventually I want my kids to live in it, or there's some other, as you say, emotional attachment to the exercise that blurs the vision in terms of the cold, hard numbers associated with the investing that ends up compromising both. It doesn't quite work for what they intended. It doesn't work that well as an investment either. So that's a pretty good learning fairly early in your journey. And again, I'm hearing that there's a lot of, understandably, because I was no different, backyard investing in relation to, it was all stuff that you could walk and talk and knew. Where did it go from there?
So at that point, we were in our little back unit, and my partner and I have the belief and the way that we want to live our life is don't get too comfortable. Now, the reason why we have that is both of us have parents who've lived in their properties for 30, 40, 50 years.
Yeah.
And we've seen, I guess, the entrenched mindset that comes with that. And so one of the ways that we live life is don't get too comfortable. So we'd been in that back unit for about five years. And he said, let's move. Let's move close to Geelong Regional Centre. And I went, sounds great to me. Let's be the inner city chick couple going out for dinners and all that, because we can. We've got a property portfolio of 4 or 5 by now. We can certainly do this.
Absolutely.
So and once again, backyard investing. We drove past, we looked at a lot of different properties, and we found a property in East Geelong, because Geelong West was too expensive, and Drumcondra and Rippleside were too expensive for those who know Geelong. Yep. And East Geelong was relatively unknown, but we'd walked around it, we'd seen some shops, and literally on the highway, we saw a for sale sign of a property. I went, let's go check that out. And this was on the way to a massage out in the Bellarine Peninsula type of thing. So I thought, why not? Let's go check that out. And the property we found was a 1911 Edwardian that had beautiful property that had pretty much all of the guts ripped out. And when I say guts, dirt floors and no internal walls.
Wow.
And we went, this is right for renovation. We can do this. We've done renovations before.
Famous last words?
Yeah, it was absolutely famous last words. Because when all the hard work's been done, it's all been ripped apart. Let's go ahead and purchase this. So we certainly did purchase this property and we lived in it. And dirt floors on a main road, you hear all of the cars go past and the trucks. But that was fine because we're like, this is great. We had a housewarming because we thought we'll have a housewarming for this particular house. And all of our mates came in and said, geez, this is not your style, guys. And you could have purchased a house with at least a floor and some walls. What are you doing? And so we got to work on our renovation. After one weekend in, we realised that the renovation was much more extensive than any of the facial uplifts that we had done before. And we better call in some professionals. And it wasn't until the builder said, we need to crane in a beam, that we went, and that is why we could not do the renovation ourselves.
Yeah. Yep. There's probably, and again, without knowing the details here, but if you're borrowing money against that property, banks don't like incomplete or gutted buildings. They tend to downvalue them. So were you having to rely on equity from your other properties to contribute to the cost of doing that one?
Absolutely, 100%. That's exactly what we found. We had to get a builder's valuation of how much the works would take to complete. Yep. And the builder's valuation was 60K. And we went, 60K, not a problem. And so the bank accepted that. We obviously had to put in a fair amount of equity as well.
Yep. That
renovation itself was actually 200K. And so that was a significant stress on us. But we were up for the challenge. And this is the thing, Bushy, is that with each and every one of these property purchases, it's created a challenge and a stress from a money and equity point of view each and every time. That very first subdivision that we did, whereby we built the 2-bedroom townhouse on the back, we didn't realise at the time, because we worked out our finances, and we didn't realise that when we started the build, we would have to cough up with our component of the deposit first through the construction phases. And then the bank would be able to put in their components. So there was a point when I think the slab and the frame went down for that particular property, and we were left short because we knew in 3 months' time we'd have it all saved. But the bank said, no, we're not funding it until you've funded that component of the deposit. So we were at the point at that time of literally looking for spare change in the couches. We were pulling the pillows apart. We were looking for the spare change, and would come up with the decision that we would work via our credit card, and we'd live on credit for those 3 months and pretty much eat rice for those 3 months in order to save the money. And so we funded a part of that bill just with our credit card, knowing that our income would come in as it normally does. And so people, when they look at us now, and as I said, over $6 million of property now, go, geez, you guys have had it easy. But they don't remember, or no one knows, the times when we've been kept short. And that particular renovation that I've just started to speak about, the 60K that then turned into 200K, that was another time when we were short, and we're like, how do we make it? So we literally had to pull money out of the other properties, and that was when we sold that. I don't call it a mistake. That learning of a property. In order to create the equity or capital to fund that renovation.
Some great learnings there, and again, if I'm reflecting back on where you came from, which is that very conservative, save, don't spend what you don't have. That must have been very challenging for you. So to move through that, other people sleep easy with that sort of stuff, but to go through that, given your starting point, I can imagine it being quite stressful, a lot of sleepless nights. And as you say, people always look at the end result and go, gee, you've had it easy. No one understands the trials and tribulations that you have to go through and the wars with yourself in your head. Yep. That you're struggling to maneuver through that and come out of it. But I love the learnings as well that you're taking away from this. So once you move through that 60 come $200,000 renovation, where to from there?
Well, we were like, you know what, that's stretched us enough. Let's just rest. And so we so-called rested.
Yep.
For 3 years.
Yep.
Now, when I say rest, we didn't necessarily rest. I had my daughter. She came along in 2017.
Yep.
And at that same time, work was incredibly busy. And I was working for the local government, and I was also, in a way, like your Alice Springs story there, Bushy, I was building a community-owned vision for the whole of Geelong region.
Wow, awesome.
And that in itself is the largest local area engagement nationally to build a 30-year long-term vision that really galvanised the community, changed the community sentiment, and you can tell it changed through the media articles. Yep. And really kickstarted the regeneration of the Geelong region.
Wow. Well, look at it now. Look at it now.
Oh.
I mean, it's just going gangbusters, and will continue to, by the way. And I just for those that are listening to this, on a microism of what you've just talked about there, trying to massage all the disparate groups who had different ideas and often didn't like each other, and it's an orchestra leader's nightmare, trying to pull all of that together and get some sort of unified exercise that everyone's going towards. I can't even imagine how challenging and time-consuming that must have been to actually bring that together.
Oh, thank you, Bushy. Thank you for the recognition. It was incredible. We had 160 events attended across 10 months. 180,000 data points and those data points are specifically people's voices of what they wanted for the region. And it was to create, this is one of my I'm very proud to say, one of my legacy pieces. Yeah. And the thing is, people forget, in 2015, the sentiment around the region was the closure of all the manufacturing.
Totally.
And so this vision, that the work that was done in 2016 and 2017 absolutely kickstarted the regeneration of the region, allowed for government funding, a united voice of all of the parties, because they were very much not on the same page beforehand, saying this is what we want our region to look like, feel like, be like. And since then, so many of the businesses and the advocacy voices keep coming back to that vision.
And again, a great example on a very large scale of the importance of mindset and the narrative, the self-talk that becomes our outward talk and reinforced by the media. Having the media, that was the thing that made or break it for us in Alice Springs. Is the guy I did it with, he's a journo. So he was very good at crafting the message and getting the message repeated right across the board. And that was what carried it, I think, at the end of the day. It sounds like you've had very similar success with what you've done in Geelong, but I'm old and crusty enough to know what Geelong used to be like, and there was very negative feelings about Geelong, not just in Geelong, but generally.
Yep.
If you jump forward to today, it's just done a complete 180 backflip, and everyone I talk to, even around the nation, talks very highly about the potential and the prospects of Geelong and where it's heading. So, hands down, what a great legacy that he created. But also, I understand that wasn't a 3-year break. That you would have been up to your eyeballs making that happen. So it's really interesting. I love it, and the psychology that sits at the base of that, given your own focus, I can see why you would have made that success. I take my hat off to you.
Thank you. Yeah. And it was all based on appreciative inquiry, which is really going, well, what is it that you appreciate about the area? And that each and every conversation that I had around the vision really changed people's perception, because I'll go, what do I appreciate? Well, I've never been asked this question before. And
what a great question. It sounds simple,
Yeah.
but asking the right question prompts the right answer. So masterstroke in coming up with that question, because it forced them to focus on gratitude and the positive. They didn't have a choice with that question. So brilliant, masterstroke. Love the work on that. That's awesome. Hey, let's jump back into the property arena then. So you had a 3-year break. Where to from there? What happened?
Yeah, so it got to 2020 and I was just getting, I guess, my head together after being a mother for 3 years, because that in itself was a really significant it was a really significant change in my life, and a really significant change in my beliefs and my mindset. And so that was, you say it was like I say it's like a 3-year break. It wasn't, because there was a lot going on from a personal perspective of trying to understand how to not only love this little person, but also bring her up. And so it
would have brought back all of those your own childhood beliefs and the way you were brought up. So I can imagine there would have been some tension there in yourself in relation to what I experienced and what I think I should be doing, and what was happening in between that.
All of that. And so we get to 2020 and mid-2020, and we'd been living in our inner city house that we had renovated for a couple of years now.
Yep.
And we made the realization that we were no longer the hip inner city couple. We were actually a family. And you know what? Those motorbikes going past at 1 a.m. that were waking us, sleep was now very much a valued resource.
Yeah. And
we decided that we'd go and purchase this house where we are now. And it was really instigated once again by my partner, who said, I think we need to move. And I found just the spot. And because we'd already lived in Lara through our very first purchase, we only looked at one house, and this is it. And we looked at it and we went, looks like we'll purchase this. Sounds great. And so we moved in October 2020. Now, it's really important that I give you that date, because I was still combating with the belief and the mindset that, hang on a sec, we're no longer the inner city hip couple. And that particular block that we had bought, there was also potential for subdivision too.
Right.
So we said, right, once we move out, let's subdivide, rent it out, subdivide it. Once again, still with our MO.
Yes.
And, then the one that we built on the back in our retirement, we can always move, but we can always move back in our retirement. Perfect idea. That was the plan. Now, remembering we moved out in October 2020, a very significant event happened.
Pandemic. Yep.
2021. January, February, March 2021. And that was when we were all thrust, put to work from home.
Yep.
Now, if we were still in that renovated house, I would have been working out of the bedroom. And, it was quite a small house, and we would have been all over each other's toes.
Yeah.
Also, during that time, we started down our renovation pathway. And in the 4 to 5 years that we'd owned the property, being in a heritage area, a lot of the rules had changed, and we were unable to subdivide the property due to a whole heap of reasons, from the Telstra pit that was in the spot where the crossover would be and would cost $30,000 to move that.
Yeah.
And so the feasibility on that to be able to subdivide just wasn't there as what it was 5 years ago.
Yeah. There's probably some heritage constraints kicking into that style of property too, I would have thought.
Absolutely. Some significant heritage constraints that had come through, particularly in those past 5 years. So December 2021, we made the realization that we would stay in this particular property where we are now today, and that we would say goodbye to the property that we had renovated. That was the best location ever, but it was time to say goodbye. And we were the first option on the open weekend when Melbourne opened up. And we ended up with Melbourne Purchasers, who basically had an open checkbook. And the amount of capital that we made paid off this property and started the domino effect of paying off our other properties too.
Love it. I mean, that's, as you would know, what happened post-pandemic has been the second highest rise in property values in the 230-year history of Australia, Dr. Simone. So, and what I love about what you've done, you've taken advantage of that. A lot of people and they'll be emotionally attached to a property, and then they'll miss the boat. Again, I'm hearing your investment glasses coming on, going, no, here's an opportunity too good to refuse. It doesn't work for us now. Let's take advantage of it and put it towards something else. It's just brilliant. What a great windfall.
Yeah, and it all came down to numbers at the end of the day. It was bringing in, I think, about 2.5% versus the amount in capital, and we just went, it's time to say goodbye. As much as we wanted to subdivide it, it was no longer feasible due to the introduction of additional heritage overlays. We said it's time to say goodbye. As much as we'd love to move back in, let's move on now.
Smart. So where do we go then? So we've eliminated a lot of debt. You've been doing a lot of backyard stuff, and I know from Google stalking you went a bit further than that. So I'd love for you to take us on the journey from there.
Perfect. So the freedom that it created to eliminate the debt in this house, it shifted mindset completely. And we're like, what do we do now? We literally went, what do we do now? We don't have to pay a mortgage anymore. Hang on a sec. What choices? And it really came down to choice. What choices can we create now? And it was at that point whereby this property had been paid off alongside two of our investment properties. And at that point, we owned 6 investment properties plus this house. And I went, I think I'm ready to retire. and I think I'm ready to go into coaching. And so that's literally what I did, because I went, those investment properties can fund themselves. We did have some issues with where we had invested in that 3-lot subdivision. It is in the lowest it's in the lowest of the bottom 10 socioeconomic areas of the whole of Australia. And what that means is that the pool of people that live in those areas result in a lot more wear and tear of the properties. And we made the decision to offload at least one of those at that time. Just what led to us deciding to offload this was we were going out for basically buying some socks on a date, my partner and I. And I'd been sort of starting to look around, and I looked around at some of the seaside coastal towns, lifestyle towns, versus some house and land packages in my area that had done really well. And we're out buying socks, and we bought our socks, and we're like, we don't want to go home yet. What are we going to do? And I said, look, there are some properties that I've been thinking about. And we went, right, let's go have a look at these. So we went and had a look, and we went, all right, let's have a discussion. We're driving along in the cars. We're looking at the vacant land of the house and land packages and stuff. And my partner said, you've done the sums? I said, yep. He goes, how many can we afford? I said, 1 or 2. He goes, if we really push it, how many can we afford? I said, 3. So we put the deposits down that afternoon for 3 house and land packages.
When was this? This was in...
This was April 2021.
Okay. Very brave. Very brave.
Very brave.
I'm unlike a lot of players in the property space. I'm a big fan of building properties because there's some amazing stamp duty savings because they're only paying on the land, not the full price, and the full tax appreciation is still on offer for new builds. So from a cash flow affordability perspective, they work really well if it's in the right location and everything else is right. I'm not suggesting buying it in acres of undeveloped greenfield stuff where they can build houses forever, but in the right location, I think they are a good model. But at the time you went into it, there's some challenges around the construction industry. Although I think probably what was working for you, and correct me if I'm wrong here, you put the deposit down because of the fact that probably titles weren't issued and the builders weren't going to get in sight for a period of time. You can ride the wave of free equity uplift on the strength of the deposit, which is just an absolute gimme. Was that the case?
That was exactly the case. And there was some issues around the construction industry at that time around supply, but that was it. That was all we had heard at the time. None of the builders or construction agencies had gone under at that point.
Yeah.
It was just some issues around supply. And we're like, well, we can write this out. There is no problem about this. Yeah. Let's just put the deposit down for 3.
Yeah.
And we said, how do we fund that when they actually do title? So we said, all right, we're going to say goodbye to 1, maybe 2 of our lowest performing in the portfolio, which was the 2 that was located in the lowest socioeconomic suburb. And we said, that's our plan. Yep. Awesome. Fantastic. So at that time, I decided to finish up a life of corporate servitude. And my first project was to do a little mini facelift up of one of our properties. Yep. And in that 2-month period, it had grown by about $60,000. So that particular area had gone up in $60,000 based on when I got valued in the April 2021 to the June 2021 when we sold. And I went, well, this is curious. This is very curious. And because it had gone up so much, we sold the second property and said, right, what do we do now? And through the release of those 2 properties, it then paid off the last 3 properties. So we basically had our current property and 4 residentials fully paid off. And we're like, we've made it now. What do we do now?
You don't want to get too comfortable, remember?
That's it. Exactly.
Awesome. So there's obviously some other steps beyond that because, I know you were sort of starting to dip the toe into the commercial arena. Mm. So let's round out the journey.
Absolutely. So rounding out the journey, we had the 4 properties and I thought, let's get some financial advice. So found a financial person in Sydney that was offering free financial advice. So had the meeting and they laughed at us. They literally laughed at us and said, you're not our clientele. You're not even working. And if you're going to make it anywhere in life, you've got to do a lot more work than that. Now, I actually thanked that person once again because it was another wake-up call going, you know what, we could actually do more with the capital that we have. So what do we do? And it was at that point whereby my good mate, who's also been on the show, Brian and Lisa Hatt, said, have you thought about interstate? And that started the journey to start researching interstate because I was, up until that point, I was the backyard investor. Had through creation of value, through subdivisions or renovations and uplifts. But at that point I went, let's go interstate. And I had the time because I was no longer working full time.
Love it. So
I researched and I researched and I researched. Found a property in Townsville and what I sold, the property that I sold in the lowest socioeconomic area in all of Australia, which was a tiny 2-bedroom cement house. I was able to purchase a duplex in Townsville, 4-bedroom and 1-bedroom apartment duplex, and bought in, instead of my 3.1%, for the exact same price yield, I was able to bring in 9.2% yield. Dual
income, great cash flow. Brilliant, absolutely brilliant. I love that, and I'm picking here. You probably, where a lot of the stuff that you've been doing before doing this is all yourself and your partner. You're probably using a buyer's agent and some other players to assist in the road, which again is a big step for a lot of people in trusting others. To be able to be looking after your benefits. But as you know as well as I do, I believe that property is an elite team sport. You need to know enough to make sure that you're managing your managers. But if you've got really good independent professionals helping you, they can actually open your eyes to things that you probably wouldn't have come across otherwise.
That's exactly what happened. And the buyer's agent that we chose, I dismissed initially. And I went, I can surely do this. I know enough about property. But to dip the toe in interstate and thoroughly research the areas, I spent 3 months. I gathered my stats. I looked everywhere, and I went, you know what? I still have no idea about where the best place is to purchase interstate, because what I knew in the microcosm of the Geelong region, and if we go a little bit further out of Victoria, is nothing compared to the multitude of markets. And by this stage, I'd been investing in the Geelong region for 13 years now, so I knew it back to front. I knew some of the regional markets in Victoria because I've been following those, but you can't build 13 years of property knowledge in a matter of months interstate, because there's just too many places.
Yeah, brilliant. So you got that one under the belt. Tell us about your start of the commercial exercise. Tell us about that one.
Yeah. So after that one in Townsville, Western Australia was just about to awaken to the world. And so in a space of 6 months, I purchased 3 places in Western Australia to really ride off the back of opening up to the world.
Yeah.
And it got to the point where I went, I have done a lot of residential, and I've conquered the interstate thing. Where to next?
Yeah.
And once again, my good mates Brian and Lisa Happ said, have you thought about commercial? So I started to think about commercial. I went, too hard. And it was once again that mindset belief, because throughout my whole life, I always saw commercial as being for those people who were big in property.
Yep.
And I still now don't see myself as being big in property. And I've got a fair, reasonable portfolio of real estate, but I still don't see myself as being big. So I always had the belief that, no, commercial's not for me. It's way too complex, way too complicated, and no. And what happened was another opportunity for subdivision came, this time through the family again.
Yep.
And with that, there were some really clear rules, because it was going to be potentially from family. And the rules must be single story. I did the feasibility and the numbers didn't stack up. And just looking at that, I went, for that amount, I could actually buy commercial. Why would I be going down the path of another subdivision when the numbers clearly don't stack up? And for that same amount of money, I would invest. Let's go down commercial.
Yeah, love it. Can you put a bit of shape around what that looks like?
Absolutely. So I did some research, and look, it was going to be like a 1.2 to 1.4 mil subdivision in a lot in Melbourne, which would be purchase of the land and the old house, demolish it, split it down the two, build 2 houses.
Yeah.
And so for 1.2 to 1.4, even 1.5 mil, I just went, commercial is worth that. Okay, let's go. So I then spent a couple more months really researching, reading books, looking online, talking to people that I knew around this idea around commercial. Once again, got another buyer's agent and said, this is my portfolio currently. Where do I go with commercial? I'm thinking about something around the 1 mil mark. And that buyer's agent was able to purchase a property on behalf of myself in northern Queensland. That it has ended up being a pool, a dance studio, a hairdresser's salon, a beauty salon, and 2 residential. So it's 1 head lease with 6 subleases.
Brilliant. So six forms of income to diversify the exercise. So if one tenant drops out, you're not exposed. Yeah, I love that. I love that. And what I love about commercial in particular is that, the yields are generally better because the tenants are paying most of the overhead. So from a cash flowing perspective and a long-term exercise as part of the portfolio, what a brilliant addition at that point. No, that is awesome. I feel like we've only scratched the surface here and we could talk for hours about this, but I really love that you've broken it down. And I love the journey that you've been through in your head. Because what I always say is that a person's portfolio is only good in terms of that evolving is only good as the evolution of their mindset and their knowledge and comfort and clarity around what they're doing. So over that journey, as your portfolio has increased, so has your comfort level and awareness of what doesn't work, which is a really important part of the process that a lot of people looking in from the outside don't appreciate, sadly. But just before we sort of jump into the topics that are near and dear to both of our hearts, if you're starting out again, Simone, what would you invest in differently, if anything?
This is the thing. I have pondered that because each and every investment has been a leap and a challenge for myself. And that leap and that challenge has resulted in growth and new learning. So if I didn't invest in that property that was close to my mother's house, I wouldn't have realised the impact of emotion. If I hadn't invested in the lowest socioeconomic suburb in lowest 10 of the socioeconomic suburbs in all of Australia, I wouldn't have been open to potentially investing interstate. So I look at that and I go, it needed to be that journey. Yeah. And I actually thank myself each and every day as well for not signing that original little apartment or unit at the back, because my life would have turned out very, very differently at that point. And I actually also thank that original real estate agent for haggling for that extra $5,000 that resulted in me not being able to sign that form.
Absolutely love it. Well, I really want to thank you for sharing that quite extensive journey, both work-wise and in the property fund.
Stay tuned for part 2 of this interview next episode.
Thanks for tuning in to Get Invested on the Property Hub podcast channel, your home for property investment insights and inspiration. And don't leave yet until you've taken the next step towards living by design by getting my award-winning book, Get Invested, absolutely free when you sign up at knowhowproperty.com.au or bushymartin.com.au. And finally, make sure you subscribe to Property Hub to get your weekly dose of Get Invested inspiration, along with every episode of Realty Talk, Australia's leading property show for red-hot property investing news and insights, direct from industry leaders and influencers. Remember to always get invested in your knowledge, and I look forward to seeing you next time.